Welcome to Mentor. I'm Marco Bertozzi.
And I'm Rachel Ford.
And we are the founders of TheZoo.London, the consultant collective and executive search business. And we are in the business of talent.
We are in the business of talent. Mm-hmm. And this podcast, this career podcast, is all about bringing hard-earned wisdom from world-class leaders who've been there, seen it, and are here to share their advice for you. And we like to say insights you will not find in a business book.
That's correct.
But you can use them in everyday life. And today we have an amazing guest, our first doctor, Dr. Vivian Mohr. Said that right? And really lovely guy. I think his times at McKinsey as a consultant has really set him in terms of how he approaches leadership and business. And something that really, and we go into it a little bit, is about that when you do go in and you have a plan, you've got to have clarity on that plan. You've got to have the courage to execute that plan and the humility to bring people on with you. And if one of those three is out of kilter, so if you have the plan and you bring people on you but not the courage to make some hard decisions, it'll fall down. So if you haven't got those all three, I thought that was a really interesting discussion that we had.
And obviously with all the stuff they've been doing with the Clear Channel acquisition, and you're going to need all of those things. Yeah. But it struck me throughout, what sort of genuinely nice guy, focused on people. Yeah. And we've talked about it before, but sort of talked about the psychological safety and how. But he went a little bit further and was actually sort of saying like how he's quite quick to expose his weaknesses, self-deprecating, or just be honest about, weaknesses that he has, so that people understand, it sets a tone, doesn't it?
It does. And also he's very much a team, like it's all about the team, isn't it? So providing that psychological
really
safety
nice
for the team allows everyone to thrive. So we're going to get him in after a little moment from our sponsors. Hey Marco, when you think of a great mentor, what words come to your mind?
I think smart, definitely, supportive, obviously wise and experienced for sure.
Yeah, I think the same really. And, someone knowledgeable who pushes your ideas beyond your first ideas.
That's why we chose Viral Tribe, because they've helped us on our podcasting journey.
Yeah, you could say they've been our podcasting mentors, couldn't you?
They
have been our ultimate support system, helping us with creative ideas, production. And with state-of-the-art studios like we're in today in the heart of Soho, London, they're not just brilliant at what they do, but they make the whole process seamless and stress-free.
And they work with some of the biggest creators, producers and brands, making everything from chart-topping shows to branded entertainment.
So if you're thinking about launching a video, an audio, a live podcast, make Viral Tribe your podcasting mentor.
Drop them a line at hello@viraltribe.co.uk, and if you quote mentor, they'll give you 20% off your first 3 bookings.
So what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? We are delighted today to welcome Dr. no less Vivian Mohr, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Bauer Media Group, one of Europe's largest privately owned media companies. Founded in Hamburg in 1875, so I think it's 150 years last year, is still owned by the Bauer family today. The company operates across radio, publishing, digital platforms and outdoor advertising, reaching more than 80 million listeners every week through its audio business alone across 9 European countries. Dr. Vivian joined Bauer in 2022, initially as the COO of the company's online comparison platform business, helping lead the expansion of its digital marketplace and price comparison services. Just over a year later, he was appointed president of Bauer Media Audio, overseeing a network of major radio brands across Europe, including Absolute Radio, Kiss and Hits Radio, as well as leading stations across markets from Ireland to Poland and the Nordics. Today, as Chief Operating Officer, he helped shape the operational strategy for the entire group during a period of significant transformation, including Bauer's expansion into outdoor advertising following its acquisition of Clear Channel Europe North. Is that last year?
Last year,
We are going to talk about that.
Coming up to 1 year.
Yeah, I thought so. Before joining Bauer, Vivian built his career across consulting, media and digital platform businesses, including leadership roles at Comparis, which is the comparison site, and earlier at McKinsey and Company. He also spent time in academia, including a PhD at the University of Cambridge, earning him his doctorate and giving him an unusual blend of academic, digital and media experience. So, Dr. Vivian, I hope that was an okay intro. We've kind of skirted all the way to the end. We were going to dive into the past, but we're so delighted to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.
For being
and
here.
As ever, we always like to start with a career in 60 seconds. So take us right back to the start and how you got into all this and a bit of your sort of upbringing.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if you go all the way back, right, I grew up between Germany and the States and then finished high school back in the US. My mother was unwell, so I went back to Germany for my undergrad. After she was better, I lived in New York for a while, lived in Dubai for a while, and then I came to the UK to do my postgraduate education, basically at Cambridge, as you said. Wonderful time looking at how do technology companies grow and evolve, and what strategies do they use for that, which was really interesting.
So were you working in Dubai? You were working in Dubai?
I was studying in Dubai, actually, back then.
Right.
So back then. So that was before the Burj was up. And before they had a metro and everything. So now, navigating Dubai without a metro in a taxi with limited Arab skills, so to speak, your own sort of agility and survival training in a way.
I've got to say, that was a lot.
That was a fun experience. And then I worked in New York for a while as an intern way back, out in Long Island, and I did my degrees back in Cambridge, which was wonderful place to be. Right?
And is that when McKinsey came knocking then? When you
in essence, yes. So I joined McKinsey out of being a research associate at Cambridge at the time, and spent basically 4 years doing, TMT and private equity work with, banking, pharma, etc. Mixed into that, which is, a really great experience because, on the one hand, you learn how organizations make decisions, but also how they navigate complex change, which was really quite a great foundation for a lot of the work that I do, right? And then after McKinsey, I first joined NZZ, so Swiss flagship news brand similar to the FT, and then CH Media, which was, so to speak, emerging out of NZZ at the time, which really helped me understand a little bit how media companies, navigate when fundamentally technological disruption happens, right? And on the back of that, I then joined Comparis, as you said, which was consumer media, which was a really great experience for being in a fast-growing consumer technology company and learning how they innovate and how they scale and how they operate, and really see corporate agility live and software development live, which was a great experience to then bring into Bauer Media Group, where I'm, as you say, now have the great pleasure of working with all the teams in the corporate center and in audio and in outdoor and in publishing, as we, so to speak, seek to write the next chapter in our 150-year history.
150 years, that is a long time in media.
And thinking back to the McKinsey time, was that now, obviously now in your role, I guess maybe you had the opportunity to work with consultants on the sort of wider business strategy. How do you look at consultants and their role with businesses, having been in it and around it? Because there's a lot of cynicism, aren't there, sometimes about how they sort of support businesses or not.
Yeah. Look, my perspective was, if you were to cynically speak about it, right, consultants are a tool and they do what, so to speak, what they do, right? As in, if there's a lot of bad practice, unfortunately, in some consultancies where, so to speak, it's literally, farming the client and give me your watch and I'll tell you the time sort of thing. There's also some really good and impactful work that is going on. And the most impactful work that I've done and I've seen being done is when, the client and the consultant are quite aligned, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? and also when the client knows, what are we going to use the consultancy piece for, right? I think it's always difficult if leaders try to, so to speak, externalize responsibility and externalize decision making to a consultant, as in, tell me what you want to do or what I should be doing here, and instead use it very precisely. Okay, here's a specific problem that we would like the answer to. Please, can you help us get to the answer, right? So that's where I've seen quite impactful engagements.
And do you think, what I was hearing then, and I do think a lot of the consultants are in, and like Bain's in, and they're doing this whole restructuring, and almost then leaders can say, oh, they're just coming in meddling, in a way. Is it because of the execution, or you've just got to all be there in terms of we have to do something? What recommend? So you talk about making sure that you do it as a partnership. Is there any recommendations you could say as consultants going into businesses, how they take the whole organisation along with them, or is it that's not their role?
Look, I think we'll speak about this later, right? I mean, if you, the biggest mistake I made early in my career, so to speak, is, and if you come out of consulting, go into the industry, it's very easy to think that as long as you have a great strategy, the organization will naturally follow you, right? And the biggest mistake I've once made in my life was, so to speak, we had a brilliant strategy where I convinced, absolutely, everybody's going to follow the strategy, and that didn't work. And that was really, instructive to me, and so I spent a lot of my time really thinking about alignment and communication and taking people along, and what I call building courage, so to speak, for change, right? Because it's in transformation, in digital transformation, it's seldom the strategy or the technology. Those are the enablers. It's the culture and it's the belief and the courage that really makes something change and stick. Yeah,
and it's fine because this is about learning, and there's no order to this podcast in terms of biggest kind of mistakes. But I think, there's a saying, isn't it, that strategy without execution is hallucination. And unless you execute it brilliantly, then it, as you say, it's just strategy. But
did that come? Was that disconnect because you built the strategy in isolation and hadn't brought the team with you? Is that what you were saying, that in that example?
Yeah, I think, in that particular example, right, it was us as a team and us as a management team, right? Yes. Being very focused on what is the right strategic answer for the organization at that point in time, right? And it was, so to speak, we hadn't spent enough time really taking along and listening, so to speak, to the board, right? What is the board trying to achieve? What is what is even realistic with the organization we have in hand? What's realistic with the technology we have in hand, right? Etc. And the strategy was brilliant, right? To your point, right? The execution plan was also quite solid, so to speak. If people don't believe in, so to speak, if people don't have the courage to change and can't, get behind the notion of change, then that's where it's just going to fall on their face.
Yeah, and do you do that through trying to get people? It's about taking people on the journey, but is it a bit like I used to? Who else was talking about on a podcast? So when I went in to do quite a big transformation piece, I said, are you on the bus or off the bus? You're either on the bus on this journey or you're going to get left at the bus stop. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But then actually, it was Karen Blackett. So she said, because it is hard, because we're dealing with humans, aren't we? And it's human nature. So you want to take people on. So you want to take people on the journey, on the bus. But then she'd say, so where are you? Are you on the top deck or are you on the bottom deck? Or do you just want to stop at the minute on this bus stop and then get back on the bus? So it's that there is a whole piece where human nature. What is your advice and then how do you get people on the bus then?
Yeah, to stay with your example, I think step number one is to meet people where they are, and to do that in a non-cynical, non-judgmental way, right? Because we're all humans, we all shape our history, we're all shaped by our experiences, and everybody's my standpoint is always everybody's well intended. So I haven't met a single person who gets out in the morning to be difficult.
Yeah.
So, and to stay with your analogy, I think the question, if you get to the point of are you on the bus or not on the bus, so to speak, that's quite late in the process. Actually, it's more like, okay, so meet them. Okay, so what are we trying to do? Right? Are we going to Paris? Or are we going to Moscow? Right? Okay, so we're going to Paris. Okay, are we taking the plane, train, or bus?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're taking the bus. Okay, and then are we on the bus or not on the bus? Right? I think that's, so to speak, the third question on the way. But as taking people along the entire journey, making them understand, okay, so why are we going to Paris? Oh, okay, want to see the Eiffel Tower, is a bit difficult in Moscow. Is, that typically then helps build, gives clarity, it helps people have the courage to undertake that journey, and also then to just have the humility. It's like, oh, okay, the air traffic controllers are on strike, so as taking the plane as we initially thought isn't maybe such a great idea, let's take the bus maybe.
I like this. You've taken our bus analogy.
There's a lot of transport chat. We've covered. Is there anything we've missed? I think I remember. I can't remember if it was through sort of official coaching or through someone giving me some advice. But the other thing I always sort of remember is when there is pushback, right? Because ultimately, in your position, you've got to make some big decisions. Mm-hmm. Whether it's as a management team or individually, but you have to make big decisions. I always think if you get pushback, sometimes the best thing is to put yourself in their shoes and try and understand what they're going through, to be able to then have a better answer or a better understanding of their situation, and then you can get to where you want to get to almost more quickly. Whereas if you just kind of don't pay any attention to that and say this is the plan, mm-hmm. And then you get pushback, and sometimes it's easy to get annoyed when people aren't going along with your plan. But I think there is something in that, like, have that proper understanding of someone's situation to be able to then make your plan more relevant to them.
Yeah, completely.
You're solving.
Look, to me, always, leadership is about three things, right? It's about providing clarity because we live in an incredibly complicated environment, and as we also know how rapidly the environment can evolve. And it's very easy to confuse activity with progress, right? So the important bit is to understand, okay, what is it that we're doing that's actually moving, we'll go from transport to sports analogies, what's actually moving the ball down the field, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the clarity piece, right? And then the second one is the courage piece, right? Number one, obviously, as a leader yourself, being courageous to say, okay, we have consciously said no, because strategy is often about saying no. We've said no to these 5 things, and we've said yes to this thing. So this is what we're doing. Yes, this is what we're doing. We're not looking left and right. Yeah, this is what we're doing. But also importantly, building the courage. Back to the earlier conversation we had. It's easy enough for the leader to run out front, right? But leadership comes from followership. If you don't have followership of the organization, you're just an idiot running around somewhere in the desert. Yeah. It's building courage. So this is the change that we actually believe in. And then to your point, right? It's about the humility piece. Yes, we've done a lot of work. We really believe in this. Where could we be wrong? And if, and my job is not to create, so to speak, to have the perfect answer for everything, right? My job is to create the environment where good answers can emerge and where people have the psychological safety to say, hey, well, actually, this thing we thought was this is actually not the way it is, right? And then to engage in a constructive and fact-based debate around this.
Yeah, and that psychological safety is key, isn't it? How do you build psychological safety?
Look, our chair Yvonne has this nice saying, right? The fish stinks from the head, right? So it's as a starting point, it's showcasing that it's okay not to be perfect, right? And I think in a way, I'm this. I start with myself, right? Anybody I meet, right? I typically give them my life story and all the 27 things that are probably imperfect about myself, which is has a few advantages. Makes life easier for everybody because people don't get irritated about some odd quirks that I have, right? It's, number two is it hopefully creates an environment where people feel, okay, so it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to, Vivian says he needs to talk about a problem as, so to speak, problem solving happens. So it's okay, so to speak, to verbalize an idea and then see how it goes. And number three, it hopefully reduces the hierarchies, right? As in point, right? We operate across 16 countries in Europe, so we have a lot of cultural differences. We have some cultures which have very high power distance, where it's very traditional. As in, the CEO, the managing director, by God, the group CEO is showing up and clearly he has all the answers. And in the environment and day we live in, it is physically impossible for any person to have all the answers to any question.
But that's humility. I can really. I only met you in Bauer in Cannes, and thought
of course.
Of course. The tentpole event of Cannes, and just like looking back then, I mean, you were surrounded by all of these UK agency chiefs, etc., and all having an incredible night. And even that night, like you were, you know, the big boss, your humility shines through completely. Like, as I say, only meeting you once there, you can really feel, and I bet your teams feel that, and it's obviously why you're so incredibly successful. You're very self-aware, and you've got humility, and we've had it a few times, haven't we, in that chair? A lot of leaders. It's an amazing skill to have, Vivian, and you've got it in the bucket loads.
There is an opposite side to this, though. I'm interested because at the end of the day, you have made you know as a group, you've made some big plays, some big purchases, and so on and so forth. The flip side of it is people do want to know there is a plan, and they do want someone. Sometimes I always sometimes think that people, there's this thing about only let people know things when they need to know, and don't tell them too much bad news. And whereas I do think there's a generation of people that actually want to know where they stand, and they want to know what's happening next, and they're grown-ups. What's the flip side of all of that kind of understanding people, and you also have to make some big decisions in your time?
Yeah, and I mean, look, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, right? For me, it's always, it's clarity, it's courage, and it's humility, and it multiplies, right? If you have clarity and you have courage, you don't have humility, to our earlier conversation, right? Then you're basically very arrogant about your strategy. You don't meet people, you're bound to trip up, right? So if you have clarity and humility but no courage, you have indecision, right? To your point, right? You can have, to our earlier conversation, I can make 500 pages of analysis in PowerPoint, etc. If nobody ever goes around doing a decision, we can add another 1,000 pages of analysis. At some point, the marginal benefit becomes very small, and somebody needs to say, okay, we're going to Paris and not to Moscow. And to your point just now, right? If you don't have the clarity, and it's super easy to be very, very busy. If you're not able to articulate towards an organization, right? And I mean, we have, what I was blessed to learn in my organization, right? The smallest team I led was one person. Bauer Media Group, where I'm now have the pleasure of working with the teams, that's 12,000 people, right? If we're not able to articulate a clear plan to the organization, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're everybody coming along, and I always think about, this is the big story that's happening in the market, this is, so to speak, our story as an organization, how we engage in it, and this is, so to speak, my story, how I personally as a leader am going to show up, and it's my commitments to you, but it's also my expectations to you. If we're not able to do that, then, so to speak, you're breaking down on that side of the formula.
Yeah, I do love that. I say, so clarity, courage, humility. It's really, I'm going to try and take, I've learned that. So really, really quick, because we're, just to go back to when you mentioned, just I think it's Rory Sutherland talks that a person's career is just a series of events that we retrospectively fit into. This is our career. I even think your time in Dubai and New York, when you go back to those experiences versus career, what did you learn then at quite a young age that you feel that you've carried with you and has helped you in how you've operated through your working life?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, look, when I was in Dubai, I was like 19, 20 or something, right? Yeah. I mean, it was, it was in a very international environment. Obviously, it's a very different cultural environment, right? And I mean, it's, I think it helped a lot to the point of, meeting people where they are, understanding their background, and also accepting and appreciating people go about doing things differently, right? And, so to speak, it's very easy to think, whatever, the German way, hey, we have a plan attack, boom, go for it, right? Or then, the British way, okay,
what's the British way?
Well, maybe slightly more,
touchy-feely? No?
More, let's say, more cognizant of other people's perspectives, and then, having, over-indexing on the front end to, so to speak, then be easier on the back end of execution, right? Whilst maybe the Germans do it the other way around. In the Middle East, obviously, you have this melting pot of cultures, right? You have Americans, you have Lebanese, you have Iraqis, Iranians, so to speak. Everybody has, so to speak, their own background, their own approach. So I think that was something that was incredibly instructive, incredibly helpful. And I think, curiosity and putting yourselves into different experiences, something which I think, is often under indexed, and which is often underrated, right? And so to speak, it was the non-obvious move for me to go to Dubai, right? I mean, my university had this long list of, partner university I could have gone to. It was for me like, Dubai wasn't on the list. I sort of created myself the opportunity to go there because I was just interested in it.
Yeah.
And, looking back to your point, I think my experience is, so to speak, the things that really advanced my career the most were two things, right? Were often the non-obvious ones, if you look at it. And number two is ones where I felt like I wasn't quite ready for those situations, right? So, I didn't speak a word of Arabic, right? So, somehow I managed to negotiate with a taxi driver not to get completely ripped off when I went to the city around, right? So that's number one, right? And New York, obviously, is, so to speak, the other end of the spectrum, right? Global metropolis. I was living there as an intern, very, flat sharing with two other people, right? The typical sort of New York experience. And I think back to the humility point, right? It teaches, so to speak, how do you individually fit into something much larger, and how can you, so to speak, contribute to something much larger, right? My job was, so to speak, I was the guy pushing, contracts from the legal department to the finance department on a little push card. Yeah. That was, in a nutshell, my job, right? And then, so to speak, okay.
So what company was that then in New York?
That was the Lufthansa, the German aviation company. Yeah. And, so to speak, I helped them in the finance department. I was like, okay, so what are we actually trying to do with the contracts? Oh, we're trying to understand the fee structures across the different airports. I sat there after work. I was like, okay, so let's actually go through, and I built them, and we built a little database, little CapEx monitoring. When it was,
yeah. What school did you go to in the States?
I went to St. Stephen's Episcopal's down in Bradenton, Florida. So you may know it from all the tennis players who are down in Florida.
Have you still got any tennis player friends?
Well, I'm terrible at tennis. I had meningitis as a kid, so I actually don't have fine mechanics. So if anything that requires me to do anything somewhat precise with my hands is, so to speak, off the table. So I can't thread. What it's in English? Thread a needle. Yeah. There's a very funny movie video of me trying to hit a golf ball for 20 minutes, and then to my saving grace, after 20 minutes I actually hit it and almost hit a hole in one, but that was, so to speak, fool's luck. So no, I'm terrible with anything that is remotely coordination related, right? My wife always gives me grief about it, in the sense of, you're obviously you're in German you say Grobmotoriker, so which is just
You're not good. What about changing a nappy? Because you've got a baby due in 2 weeks' time, haven't you?
Oh,
Can you change nappies?
Yes.
Okay.
So my wife is terrifically afraid of changing nappies. She's half Asian, so to speak. There's this entire thing about cleanliness. So I've changed infinitely more nappies than my wife in that sense. Ever since our daughter was born 2 years ago, I was always on nappy duty, to the point that when our daughter now wakes up in the middle of the night and she wants her nappy change, she comes and wakes up me, not my wife.
Yeah, good.
Because she knows I'm the nappy changing department.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good.
Well, I was always waken up, but my wife used to sleep very deeply. So my son very quickly learned that if he needed anything in the night, he would come to me. So yeah, I've spent the last 15 years being the get up in the middle of the night, apart from some of the important stuff at the start.
Yeah.
So just in those periods, we're always interested in people that have influenced you, sort of in those early years, whether it's through education or first roles. Were there people that you think of now and that had some influence on you that really kind of probably now looking back shaped?
Yeah, of course.
Your approach.
Yeah, of course. So look, if you look at it, obviously my supervisor at Cambridge, Elizabeth Garnsey, incredible woman in her own right, amazing academic, but also, incredibly influential on me, right? It's one of the most important things she always told me was like first principles, right? As in, what is the problem we're actually trying to solve, and then what is it, so to speak, what are the things that we need to do to get that problem solved, right? It's, back to the on the bus, off the bus. Because if you're at the on the bus, off the bus discussion, maybe the on the bus, off the bus discussion is the wrong discussion. If it's like, where do we, where the first question is, where do we want to go?
Yeah.
So Elizabeth really taught me, first principles, right? So that was something I still carry with me every day, right? Then when I was in consulting, I was incredibly blessed to work with people like Adam Bird, who really helped me, just break down a problem logically, but then also just put the pieces back together in creative and structured fashion to articulate that and really engage with problem solving and understanding change and how organizations make decisions. Then when I was in media and technology, I was really blessed to work with people like Steven Neubauer, who really, really taught me, okay, how do you engage, how do you use trust, and how do you build trust, and how do you bring people along on the journey for change, right? To build courage, as I call it. And then when I took leadership positions at Bauer, I was incredibly blessed to really be mentored by people like Laura Meyer, again, incredible leader, who marries extremely high expectations with a really, really deep and personal care for the team and for the people, which is something I aspire to and try to emulate every day. I will probably never reach her level, but I try to get there.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell that. No, you bring people along with you. And going back to the because we kind of we didn't, but we usually ask biggest fuck up, because obviously careers don't always go according to plan. But actually, just going back to those moments, because you talked about strategy and execution and taking people along with you, I suppose there's a lot of people going through some quite tough times in their careers right now. So when things don't go according to plan, because they can't always, what advice would you give to that? Or how do you cope with those moments? And what advice would you give to other people listening that are going through some quite tough times at the moment in their career? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I've been in those situations, right? And I think back to the urban, right? Number one is understand, so to speak, first principle. What is it that makes you unique? What is it that, so to speak, you can relevantly contribute, right? And some of the career moves I've made have been non-obvious, right? So I think that was, some of them in response to situations that you've described, right? So that's item number one. Number two is have the humility, so to speak, that sometimes the non-obvious roles might be the ones that really help you learn a lot, really help you advance your careers, and not to be arrogant about it. And number three is then also just have the courage and have the the passion to lean into it. As in, if you can't get excited about the work that you do, then it's probably not the right long-term setup for you.
Yeah, and is that having the courage to realise that?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it is. It is tough, because it's just in the UK, it's a tough work environment where there's lots of moving plates, and it's hard to even. I'm sure there's like quite a few people that feel quite miserable, but also they've got families to feed, haven't they, and mouths to feed, and I would never encourage anyone to leave a job, but I would always encourage them to try and make the role they're in the best possible, and maybe that is kind of going a bit being curious outside of your role as well. It's a tough time, but like you say, if you're not feeling uncomfortable, you're not growing. So there is a certain level of uncomfortableness, I think, in lots of people's roles, but it means you're learning, doesn't it, through those times? You learn through the tough times more than you do the good, I'd say. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, the roles I benefit, that shaped my career the most were the roles that I felt least prepared for in some instances. Number two is in the challenging times that we're going through, right? I mean, we all went through COVID, right? I mean, when I joined Comparis, right, I'd never been a CFO before, so to speak. I'd worked in a finance organization. I stepped into finance. I very practically learned what it meant to be a CFO. 3 months later, COVID hits, and then, so to speak, you have CFO on steroids. Right? Liquidity management, furloughing people, health insurance people, keeping people safe, in all of that sort of thing, right? I mean, those are things I still draw from every day because, to your point, right? It's a deeply, deeply uncomfortable situation, but also something that you benefit from incredibly learning.
I wanted to ask about the financial side of it. So were you classically, did you train to be a CFO, or were you an accountant?
I'm not a trained accountant. I studied finance. So I studied finance. I worked in finance organizations. So I know how to account, which is helpful. If you work finance, then I was a CFO in Comparis, I was a CFO in Bauer Media Group, so I'm probably more from the FP&A side of finance than so to speak the accounting treasury side of finance.
But it is interesting for leader, because I think there are there's lots of flavors of leadership out there, and there's definitely some that feel less comfortable with the financial side of things. Like, what's your advice to people around? We've had people on who say, become best friends with the CFO, for example. But what's your advice for a leader today when you're thinking about the sort of comfortableness with the finance side of the business?
Well, look, I think the finance side of the business is an important side of the business. So I think it's incumbent on any leader to become comfortable and as fluent as possible with the different sides of the business, right? So at the end of the day, finance is adding, subtracting, and if it gets really fancy, multiplying things to each other, which is something that pretty much anybody can lean into. So yes, obviously, if you have a great CFO, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed of working, with people like Richard Jackson who are amazing. I don't think it's similar to, you can't outsource responsibility for decision making to a management consultant. I don't think you can outsource, so to speak, responsibility for financial leadership to your CFO. Right? You need to understand what is, so to speak, in the numbers. You need to understand, be part of it, and then if that is an area that you're more naturally less inclined to, that is something that you probably then need to over-index in. Right? There's bits that, to our earlier conversation, I'm naturally terrible at, that I sort of need to over-index on, and that is how I also plan my week and just try to manage my time a little bit. Yeah.
And it's all so closely related at the end of the day, whether you're making decisions about people, products, strategy, having that comfortableness, level of comfortableness with the financial impact of all these things is sort of, they do go hand in hand. And I think, so it's being careful not to outsource too much to the CFO, basically.
Yeah,
it's a partnership, isn't it? For sure. And we're always fascinated with what people learn from each other, and we like to call it a magpie moment. But looking back over your career, is there a saying or a way of working or something that you saw and you thought, I'm going to steal that with pride, and you've taken it with you through your life?
Yeah, it's probably what I mentioned earlier, right? To not confuse being busy with, so to speak, making progress, right? Which is, I remember the specific situation, I was working in a role, incredibly busy, literally, up at 5, back to bed at 11 midnight, so busy. But, I remember I had this really great manager at the time. He was like, okay, so you're incredibly busy, but so to speak, what is the progress that you're making, right? And then if you're, so to speak, that really struck home because, so to speak, the last couple of days I hadn't really been making progress in the sense of, okay, so what have we actually advanced, right? And I think him helping me make that shift, right, was something that was incredibly impactful for me in that role. And it's something that I've just been always a bit on the lookout ever since then, also in organizations. It's incredibly easy, especially if you're like in a transformational situation. There's thousands of things you can do, right? There's literally an endless list of things you can do. So what, I do with everybody, as also on the team, is we sit down, right? Okay, so what are literally the jobs to be done, right? And we all, we actually call it jobs to be done, right? There's some people who say, well, this is, so to speak, you should call it strategic delivery roadmap. Or something with
OKRs. I was going to say, I work with OKRs. OKRs are very easy though. What are the key results? It's results driven, isn't it?
It's back to first. What are we trying to achieve? What are the jobs to be done? So we sit down and really present those to each other and prioritize. Okay, are these the job that's going to move the organization forward, right? And if it's not, then so to speak, why is it on the list? Yeah.
I do like that because we are all so busy. Because there's never, there's another thing, there's never enough hours in the day, are there? And actually you getting up at 5 and going to bed at 11 doesn't actually help you then perform the next day, does it? Because it's almost like that false, I don't know, like the harder you work doesn't necessarily mean the better the results.
Especially with travel. I mean, you obviously do a lot of travel. That's something that I think is, it's so easy to say yes to going somewhere because someone would like you there and as a leader, you want to spend time with people, and you want to. But that is it. It takes so much time that when you really step back, and I think COVID taught us a few things about how much travel we were doing and what you needed to do. But I think travel is a big one for trying to be careful with your time and making sure there's a real value in it.
Yeah, but I do like that, like the progress. It's like, okay, you're busy, but what's the progress? And that does, you do need a plan around that about what you're actually driving, and just as a team then to be looking at what are your achievements as a team as well, because it's leadership's never a sole endeavour, is it? You always work as a team. So again, I suppose with your line managers, making sure that they're working in the best way, because working all hours all day is not good for your health either, is it? So we've got a responsibility to make sure our teams aren't just running around focusing on the wrong things. It's a big piece, yeah.
And I guess you also, you do it for yourself. I guess that's how you're reviewing people you're working with and making sure they're not making the same mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, right? I think I'm trying to create an environment where people have the psychological safety to what I call obligation to dissent, where we have a situation where it's sustainable, so to speak. We're all playing to win, but so to speak, we're not playing to win once. We're playing to win in a continual fashion, right? And that means managing your energy. That means being, if you need to take time off, you need to take time off, and then so to speak, we work through that situation, right? And then create as a team, collectively lean into that as a team, and operate in a strength-based fashion, right? So to speak, okay, what is this? What are my strengths? What I'm, so to speak, I as a person good in bringing to the team? What are other people's strongest? And that's where, so to speak, diversity in teams is a beautiful thing, right? If you, it's not only diversity in background, it's also psychological diversity and diversity in strength, because if we have somebody on a team who's particularly strong at something somebody else is not strong, then collectively the team is just better.
No, I definitely agree with that. But sometimes it can be tough at the top, can't it? And it can sometimes feel lonely, and we're thinking about everybody. I suppose as you've moved through your career, what's helped keep you grounded? I mean, obviously 2 kids, well, one and another one on the way, that's going to keep you grounded. But are there any habits and routines that help you keep perspective, or I suppose balance or cope? I mean, what do you do to help you balance, I suppose, the work life with the home life, etc.?
Yeah, so look, I mean, as you say, right, so number one, I'm blessed with a wonderful family, right? So I mean, if the moment I came home, right, I mean, my daughter is a very girly girl, so my home life is very much, pink and unicorn and glitter, and so to speak, I come home and she could practically not care less if I'm on a call or something. So that's a wonderful thing. Look, in work life, I think it's, to your point a little bit, I do travel a lot, and I think there's a balance to be struck, but it's also important to me because it helps with that grounding is very easy to sit somewhere in a corporate headquarters and dream of all sort of things, and what actually is having an impact and what's actually helpful to the teams that are close to the customer. So I really want to be close to the teams, and I want to also be present and understand how different things are having an impact. And I think that's helpful in 2 ways, right? Because, so to speak, back to the point, leadership is about followership, right? The leader showing up and, so to speak, taking an interest is obviously helps build followership, but there's also so many good insights that then help inform what we're doing at a group-wide level is something that's really quite instructive there.
Yeah, I've got to say, your building on up near Warren Street, I mean, when I sit in that reception, there's always some pops up. I think Ed Sheeran was in last time. I think Taylor Swift had been in there. I mean, you live a glamorous life, Vivian, don't you?
Well, the funny thing is I'm usually the last person to find out. So I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, actually, and I was absolutely gutted.
I bet you were.
I found out 20 minutes after she had entered the building that she was going to see us. I wasn't even in the country.
Oh no!
So
because she just chose the radio station to promote the album on.
Yes.
But oh no, there'll be So it's probably a good idea that people didn't know she was going to be in the building, because that building would be mobbed, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So yeah,
we haven't talked much about the sort of business itself. How have you found? There's so many different strands now within the organisation, both internationally, whether it's outdoor or audio, etc. How have you found sort of managing that kind of I guess they're all at sort of different stages and different challenges within that. How do you sort of find managing across all those different channels and different businesses?
Yeah, so we have, as you say, we have 3 lines of business in 16 countries, right? We do publishing, we do audio, we do outdoor, right? And there's specific challenges to some of those businesses, right? There's also a number of joint challenges to those businesses, right? And I'm really blessed with the team that I have, right? We have some really fantastic people on the group leadership team, Justin Cochran, Ingo Klinge, Tina Sunny Davis, etc. Really, Michael Davey, Simon, Svenja, really, really great people who take a collective view of the business, and not so much it's very easy to fall into silos, right? So taking very much a unified view of the business, that's item number 1, right? Now, number 2 is then, I think, back to the clarity, courage, and humility piece, right? It's number 1 is being humble enough to accept and to allow that there are some very country or line of business specific challenges, right? Things like, I don't know, the future of ink supply is a fascinating topic intellectually, but it's completely irrelevant to, so to speak, the outdoor business. So when Ingo and I sit and we, so to speak, think about, okay, so what's strategically the position around ink supply? That is something that we do specifically for the publishing line of business. So when we then think about, okay, how can we help clients and advertising partners to own every moment? Because one of the great things, and really the only thing, the unique thing we do, because we're the only media company who has outdoor audio and publishing across Europe. So we can, if you think about your day, right, we can literally help people, on the radio in the morning, and listening to reading your magazine in the afternoon as you move through the city. We can really help advertising partners to own every moment. And how do we do that? That is something that we collectively do, right? So, and I think we're being very clear. So what's a joint challenge? And that's where do we need joint capabilities? And internally we're building, something we also call it joint capability teams. As in, what are the teams like data, like artificial intelligence, like all of these things which address a common challenge, and where do we have areas which are specific challenges? Ink, paper, etc., which are, so to speak, specific to the business.
Yeah. No, it is. Like you say, in fact, it's a fascinating business to be involved in. I'm really sorry, because we actually are almost out of time. I just want to quickly though, because I think it's obviously careers move quickly, and often we don't really get time to sit and reflect on them. And we hope, and people who sit in that chair, they say they enjoy it and they've reflected on their journey. You kind of look back on things. I suppose when you do look back on your series of events, which is called a career, what are you really most grateful for when you look back on that? What do you think I'm really grateful for that time or that moment or what that taught me when you look back on your career? Or do you still think you're still learning? You're still curious, still the best is yet to come. Who knows?
Look, I'm 39, so it would be presumptuous of me to say as I look back on my career, right?
I think you're our youngest guest, I'd say.
I would say definitely
youngest guest. Yeah, we are. So we're trying to bring the mean age in.
We've definitely had some people at the other end.
Yeah, so we're trying to get the average age down. Yeah, you are. You're definitely our youngest.
So it would be quite presumptuous of me to say, so to speak, as I look back on my career, right? So to your question, what am I most grateful for? It's really I'm most grateful for the teams that I had the privilege of building, leading, and working in, because I think very often with, sometimes very limited resource and sometimes against the odds and against, so to speak, public expectations, we were able to punch above our weight, right? Which is something I'm incredibly proud of all the teams that I've had the pleasure of leading, be it in McKinsey, be it at NZZ, be it at NCH Media, be it at Comparis, be it here at Bauer, right? So it's if I look back, that's the thing I'm most grateful for.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Well, I think there's a lot more to come, no doubt, which we'll be watching with great interest. But for now, thank you very much for spending.
Thank you so much for having
us.
me. It's incredibly kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's
been brilliant.
Fascinating.
Good to get to know you, Dr. Vivian. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that's all we've got time for, Marco. If you're still watching and if you enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe to Mentor. It means you'll get the next episode. Also, do share it with someone navigating their own leadership path, and do all the usuals on site.
And if you need any wisdom in your business, please make sure to come to TheZoo.London for any of your consulting or executive search needs.
And we love to hear all about your mentors, so do please drop us a line on our socials listed in the podcast's description.
You can also comment underneath the podcast.
You can also do that. Honestly,
that's probably the quickest way, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you are still tuning in and listening at this point, please do give us a like, a follow, comment. Nice ones, please.
Definitely.
And thank you to Viral Tribe Entertainment Production for this episode of Mentor. Join us next time.
Join us next time.
For Pearls
of Wisdom from Mentor.